Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. As you can see, it's a little overcast today, but it looks like it's going to clear up. It's Monday morning, it's the beginning of another work week. We had a wet weekend, but hopefully this week will be productive in many ways, and we'll see where it leads us. So I've come out at the northern end, or should I say the eastern end of Circular Quay Station, and we can see the Coleroy, the ferry just heading off, starting its journey to Manly, and it's going to be a busy week, no doubt, for the ferry, back and forth, but a great metaphor for our lives as well, as we continue day by day doing our routines and embarking on that journey of life. So what I want to do today is go through a book summary entitled The Decision-Making Blueprint by Patrik Edblad. So another book on how to basically enhance our decision-making process so that we can hopefully leverage on our capabilities and learn to make better decisions. And through making better decisions, we can possibly have better outcomes in our lives. So the author here kicks off the book with an observation where he says that one of the keys is to establish new habits, and these new habits are basically helped by stopping our obsession over results that we want, and instead to obsess more about just showing up every day. So have the goal, have the dream, have the plan, but don't be over obsessive, according to this author, about the outcomes, but be more obsessed in terms of showing up and doing what you need to do in order to achieve what you need to achieve. So the author then goes on to say something which is pretty powerful, and he reminds us that we humans are often lacking in rationality when it comes to decision making. And we sometimes even make decisions knowing that they're going to harm our future. We often do things that sabotage us, knowing very well that it's going to impact us in a negative way, and yet we still continue to do these sorts of things. And the rationale behind this, from the author's perspective, is that as humans we're programmed to survive and not necessarily programmed for our well-being. In a way, we have faulty thinking traits such as loss aversion. There are fallacies in our thinking processes. We are infected by biases and prejudices and all of these other things that influence the way we think and the way we behave from a cognitive perspective. So the author then goes on to talk about confirmation bias, and the first formal point from this book is where he says that we humans have a tendency to discredit anything which doesn't support our opinions, and we tend to take credit only for the things that lead or deliver successes in our lives. This infection of from confirmation biases means that we basically search our brains, our being, basically search the universe for evidence to support these biases, and we often lack the objectivity because of these biases. We also have things such as self-serving biases, where we take responsibility for successes, but we fail to take responsibility for any failures. And we fail to take ownership of negative outcomes and events, which sooner or later will impact us in a negative way. So it often happens, as the author says, that we actually change our persona to the outside world in many ways, which actually fools ourselves. But we actually need to spend more time trying to be honest and open with ourselves in order to grow and develop. So I guess the first point is to be cognizant, to be aware of our confirmation biases and how we have faulty thinking, and to try and shape and minimize those faults where possible. So the other thing that the author talks about here, which is really interesting and powerful, is that as humans, we are naturally inclined to prefer the status quo. We have a natural inclination to not want to change. But as we know, if you don't want change in your life and you want to stay where you are, or worse still, you want to go back to how you were before and live in the past, that can be very, very harmful to your future. And we need to try and work through this cognitive dissonance that happens where we want to stay as we were and not change, because change is powerful. Change is a natural part of our lives that we need to embrace and to leverage. So the author goes on to say that most people actually hate change because we are programmed. This is really interesting. I've never thought of this before, but it's a really powerful concept. Our natural state is to stay in a status quo. We are programmed to preserve energy, and hence why we don't want change in our lives. So laziness, not doing anything, just trying to stay in a particular pattern is part of our natural state. But what this does is that if we don't change, then we are challenged, and we may actually have greater problems, according to the author. So one of the things that hold us back is the concept where we think that losses from potential change count more than the things that we gain from successes or from potential gains. We do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. And this is one of those fallacies. This is one of those prejudices. This is one of those problems that we face. So people tend to prefer familiarity. What we know and what we understand is that sometimes the familiar things in our lives are bad for us, because if we prefer familiarity, then we tend to miss out on opportunities, and we can be the prey. This is an interesting concept from this author. We can actually end up being the prey for manipulators, because they know that we want to stick and stay to how things are or were, and they try and keep us in that zone and not allow us to grow and develop. But we need to understand that life occurs outside your comfort zone. So we need to lean outside that comfort zone where possible in order to find the wow in our lives. So in order to do that, the author calls on us. The call to action is to consider using the Pareto principle in our decision-making processes. And the Pareto principle basically is the 80-20 rule, where we understand that 80% of the outcomes come from 20% of the causes. So just that understanding that the biggest bang for our buck comes from a few actions or observations. So we need to ask ourselves, constantly keep on asking ourselves, what 20% helps us deliver 80%? And this is all about gaining perspective into productivity. Now, which 20% of our relationships are responsible for 80% of our happiness? So we need to learn, where possible, to focus our efforts on the best returns, to give our productivity a turbocharge, to be more calculating and to be more purposeful in our life and the things that we do, the people that we hang out with, the jobs that we do, and the energy we expend. There's no benefit in living in the past because the past is gone. And there's no benefit in living too much in the future because the future hasn't come. But it's all about being here, showing up here, being present here and now, to make the most of our nows, to make the most of our todays, according to the author. So I'm just going to jump on the train here. I'm getting into the first carriage today, and we're heading off to work. So let's finish off this episode of Jim's 5am Club, where we went through a book titled Decision Making Blueprint by Patrik Edblad, and we learned a few things. So I look forward to coming to you again from another location with another message of empowerment, where we can live, learn and pass it on, where we can take the morsels from OPE, other people's experiences, and incorporate them into our daily lives. And as we said here in this book, that there are some skills that we can incorporate into our decision-making processes to help us make better quality decisions. And by making better quality decisions, we can also engage and deliver, where possible, a better quality life. But the biggest learning point for me from this book here is learning that as humans, we are programmed to conserve energy, and this programming to conserve energy makes us lazy, and by being lazy we miss out on opportunity, we miss out on growing and developing, because we're conserving our energy and we're basically minimizing our opportunity. So the clear lesson is to lean just outside your comfort zone in order to prepare yourself to continue a never-ending growth and development. And we're going to make mistakes, as Dominic Perrottet tells us time and time again. We're going to try things, we're going to get some of those things wrong, but through those errors of judgment, through those mistakes, we're also going to learn new things, we're going to experience new things, and we're going to allow ourselves to grow and develop and become better versions of ourselves, and know a little bit more about what we can do, what we can't do, and what we can do even better. So thank you once again, and I look forward to coming to you again and having another chat and enjoying the journey. For those who are working today, happy Monday and a happy beginning to the work week. And until we chat again, yasas, and bye for now.